Welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm Heather Angel and I am really excited to bring to you an Encore episode. This is an interview I recorded a little while back, and it's going to allow you, if you are a regular listener, to listen again and see if you implemented any of that incredible expert advice. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome, my lovely. It's so nice to have you here. I usually produce a fresh new podcast episode every single week. I'm currently recovering from some surgery, so for the next few weeks there are some Encore episodes which are going to be super valuable to you. So enjoy, dive in, and I will see you very soon. You're listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and I've been helping people tune into what lights them up and increase their personal and professional performance for over a decade. Now I'm best known as a high-performance coach, helping entrepreneurs like you cut through the noise and create a business and life on your terms. If you're ready to step out of struggle and discover how simple it can be to create a fulfilling, joyful and successful business without all the overwhelm and long hours, you're in the right place. Hey gorgeous, how are you? I hope you had a lovely weekend. Oh my goodness, it's been chaos in my little world for the last couple of weeks. For those of you that are regular listeners, and if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I've moved house. So last week, moved in, unpacking boxes, moving a 4-story house into a 2-story house was interesting. I definitely, I need a holiday. But it's all done now, completely unpacked, which is lovely. My office is all set up, so I'm recording this in my new office, which is really exciting. And yeah, the energy is really good. It's amazing how when you switch up your physical environment, it completely changes everything. So it's been a busy couple of weeks, but I feel far more settled energetically. I feel like I'm 100% in the right place now, and I am really excited for all the things that are coming up in the coming months, with the podcast and the business, and life in general. So I hope you're feeling the new energy too. Here in the UK, it's the 8th of March today, so a lot of kids are going back to school. There are a lot of parents having a massive sigh of relief that their kids are finally going back to school. So it's it's a very different energy I feel today. So this episode is one I recorded a good few weeks back with my friend Becky, who is the Gentle Living Nurse. Becky is based over in Melbourne in Australia, and she is the most gorgeous soul, and we're going to talk all about how you can start living more gently. I think when you are an entrepreneur and you are in business and you are going down this whole personal development route and you're looking at changing your life, excuse me, that is my phone if you can hear that, I'm sorry. When you are looking at going down this whole route of personal development, it can be really intense and you can find yourself just pushing through it all the time. And what Becky does is help people live in a more aligned, more gentle way. And her background is actually working in mainstream medicine. She was a nurse for many years, and she shares her experience of how she used to get very frustrated that she knew she could help people a lot more if she could just break free from the constraints of, modern Western medicine. So I'm going to let you dive into this episode. It's a really beautiful conversation. I do apologize. There's a slight audio glitch, if you like. You can hear a little bit of rustling on one of the microphones, so I do apologize for that. We've cleaned it up as much as we can, but see past that and listen to the amazing content that Becky's going to share with you. Enjoy the episode and let Becky know. You can go into the show notes and find her on Instagram at the Gentle Living Nurse. Let me and Becky know what you loved about this episode. All right, my gorgeous, let's dive in. Becky, welcome to the Focused and Fearless podcast, my lovely.
Hello, Heather. Oh, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honour to be here with you, and I've really been admiring your work for a while, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm so thrilled to have you, and thank you for getting up at the crack of dawn. As you guys may have realised, there's a slight accent with lovely Becky. She is in Australia, and obviously I'm here in the UK, so trying to work out the timing for this interview was interesting. It's taken a while, but we are here, and oh my gosh, there are so many things. As I said to you before we hit record, there are so many things we could dive into. you are going to share some really important messages about how to go from overwhelmed living to the gentle living system, which is just so beautiful. So would you love to share a little bit more about who you are, how you help people, and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Becky. I am a holistic nurse and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. But at the moment, I'm on holidays on the lovely Sunshine Coast, which is good to get some fresh air and chill out a little bit. Because, like you're going through in the UK at the moment, we went through a pretty tough lockdown as well throughout our winter. So I've been working as a nurse for about over 10 years now. I've worked between different areas. So I've gone between paediatric nursing, I've done a bit of mental health nursing. I sort of always floated between different areas because I had such an interest in sort of incorporating everything, and I couldn't quite decide on what it was that I wanted to do. So I've got a passion to really bridge the gap between the mind, the body, and the spirit, which is really, really missing in our healthcare system, or in the Western healthcare system in general. And so now I work in my business, which is Gentle Living, and I support other highly sensitive people who might be struggling with anxiety and overwhelmed, because I myself am a highly sensitive person. I've had a lifelong journey of anxiety as well, and it's taken me a long time to be able to walk my own path to healing. And like I said before, it's something that's really lacking within the healthcare system, where we're sort of treating the symptoms rather than the person as a whole. So my system is to really address the person as a whole, see what their context is, understand their circumstances, and understand people's symptoms as arising from something deeper than just a medical condition as well.
Yeah, and I mean, for those that are listening, I'm just so on board with that entire ethos, because here in the UK, for sure, we are really at the, unfortunately, not even at the peak of a mental health crisis, especially with the lockdowns that are going on. And it's really come to the forefront now, finally, that mental health, physical health, they're linked. But what I love is that, it's actually mind, body, and spirit. There's a whole connection, and the holistic approach is absolutely, in my belief, the right way forward. So where did you were a nurse as well, so how did you go from having all this anxiety and working as a very overwhelmed nurse in the Western medical system to living the gentle living system?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I've always struggled with anxiety. So when I reflect on my childhood, it was something that was always there. But I think growing up in my time, mental health wasn't really something that was spoken about or really acknowledged. There certainly wasn't a lot of mental health supports back then as what there is now. It certainly still is very much stigmatized, but back then it was more a case of just getting on with it and ignoring the symptoms and suppressing it all, really. And so I sort of went throughout my childhood and my early adult years as well, just being quite an anxious person. And it wasn't really until I started to learn a little bit more about Myers-Briggs personality profiling system. So I am an INFJ, and I know that you are as well, Heather. And that sort of put a lot into context for me, and it sort of helped me to understand, wow, I do have this deep inner world. And although I'm struggling with this anxiety, it's not necessarily something that is problematic. It's just sort of a deeper part of who I am in a way. And also I started to learn a lot more about what it meant to be a highly sensitive person. And that was something that I've only really gotten on board with in the last few years or so. And so being a highly sensitive person, I am someone who looks deeply into things, looks deep beyond the surface. And I think going into, a lot of HSPs do go into healthcare, healing, or the creative arts as well, working with people, just because we've got such an interest in what makes people tick and what, the deeper context of everything as well. So I think that's what really attracted me to nursing. I knew that I wanted to work in healthcare. I knew that I wanted to work with people. I sort of always skimmed between doing psychology or medicine or something like that, but I thought nursing was a nice sort of general space where I could explore different avenues of healthcare. But when I did get into nursing and working in the hospital as a graduate nurse, I had such a rude shock to the system. So I think HSPs as well and INFJs can be quite idealistic in how we view the world. We are very aware of the suffering and the pain that's taking grip in the world, and we have such big ideas on how we can change that and make a difference. And then sometimes we can be quite inhibited by the limitations put on us through society or barriers that we might face. And that's what I found going into the hospital system. It was, like I said, such a rude awakening. As a highly sensitive person, it was bright lights, toxic work cultures, bullying is quite rife as well in the Western healthcare system or the hospital systems that I've worked in. I've worked in lovely places, but then I've worked in places that are quite toxic. So you've got the issues with the lighting, the noises, the people, the sounds. It's very overwhelming. And not only that, I had in my mind, I really want to go into nursing and really help people. But as a nurse, you are very time poor. You're given a lot of patients to take care of, and they have a lot of high needs. And so you're pretty much rushing between people, giving the bare minimum care as well. And that was really hard. I wasn't able to actually spend the time with each person as I wanted to. And you learn to toughen up pretty quickly within the hospital system too. So there are a lot of older burnt out nurses, and not even older ones actually, even young nurses burn out quite quickly. And so if you're doing something a little bit different, such as spending time with a patient or encouraging a patient to go outside for fresh air or anything like that, it's actually quite frowned upon, because it's sort of like, well, why aren't you sticking to the schedule? We've got work to do. You're meant to be going and doing this and this and this. And so that was really disheartening going into the hospital system, because, like I said, I had this genuine desire to support people, but it wasn't able to be in the way that I wanted it to be. And so over time, I just sort of adjusted to it, just accepted it, fell into really unhealthy habits, as what a lot of nurses do. In fact, nurses are probably some of the unhealthiest people that I've worked with, because we're dealing with such high stress, and because we're dealing with the emotions and the pain of people, and we're dealing with difficult politics within the work culture as well. We sort of fall into habits such as social drinking or binge drinking, really, to calm your nerves after a stressful shift. Smoking, eating really badly as well. On a shift, you'll have sort of your chips and your lollies and all these things to sort of just get you through the shift, because you're so sleep deprived as well. You're sleep deprived. And so all these things are just they're just really the perfect storm for someone who already does struggle with anxiety, who is highly sensitive, or even if you don't have that pre-existing anxiety, it can sort of push you into a state of mental ill health, because you're not getting what you need as a nurse to sort of sustain yourself, to best support the people that you want to support. And so I very quickly fell into this downward slope of drinking a lot, eating unhealthy, being sleep deprived, and just going on this cycle. And you're sort of always looking forward to your day off, and then you have your day off and you might sleep, or you'll drink alcohol, or you do all the things that are really quick de-stressors for the nervous system, but in the long time are really unhealthy. And I suppose it really all came to a head a good few years ago when I took a trip to India. I'd always wanted to go to India. And during that trip, I had it in my mind, yes, I'm going to do some yoga and meditation, and I'm going to really take care of myself. But it didn't turn out that way. And I'm not sure if you've been to India, Heather, but they do say that India always has something to teach you, and it's usually something really challenging. And when I was in India, I actually had a really, really debilitating panic attack. And I sort of felt like, oh, this has come out of nowhere. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on here. And I'd experienced panic attacks in the past, but this was really different. And it felt like it was sort of just a big reality check. And it sort of all came to a head for me that, wow, I really am unhealthy here. I'm working in healthcare that I'm passionate about, but I'm not actually taking care of myself. And so I'm not best able to support my patients and the people that I want to support. And I don't know, all of a sudden I just was faced with, wow, okay, you need to fix up your nutrition, you need to fix up your exercise regime, you need to fix up all these things that are really lacking. And so I came home from that trip and something in me had just triggered and changed. And I really took it seriously. I thought, right, I really need to take care of my nervous system in the way that is healthy for me as well. Because in the past, I'd seen doctors and psychologists and therapists, and I always felt like that approach was really just addressing the root cause of my symptoms rather than actually exploring what was underneath all of that. And like I touched on earlier as well, I am an INFJ and a highly sensitive person, but I never took that into context of what was going on for me at the time. And I came back home and it was strange. I got right into exercise. I did a little bit of exercise, but it was never really priority for me until I got home. Really got into the exercise, really looked at my diet, and I made the decision to quit alcohol for a full 30 days, which was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, because it was such a quick de-stress for me. I'd get home from work and have a glass of wine or two in the bath, and it was just that instant unwinding. But I thought, no, all these things are actually quite toxic on my nervous system. And I just outlined a plan for myself and I just followed it. And I sort of just started calling it gentle living. I need to live a bit more gentle because the way that I was living was so rush, rush, rush. And being busy is sort of like a badge of honor that we all wear as well. And so walking this path over the last couple of years now, it has really supported me to actually flourish and thrive as a highly sensitive person and to actually support people in the way that I initially intended to. And yeah, that's sort of where I was and where I came to. And now I'm passionate to support other people to implement more gentle living into their own lives and to recognize that if you are experiencing symptoms or overwhelm, to look deeper beyond what's actually going on and to understand your context, not just treat the symptoms, because if you're going to be treating the symptoms, you're not going to be getting to the root cause. And it's sort of like I see it as like a weed, if you're just picking off the top of that weed, the problem might look like it's gone, we really need to get to the root of that problem to facilitate our collective healing as well.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great analogy with, pulling off the little tops of the weeds, the root is still there, and it's so frustrating. Here in the UK, it's exactly the same. You go to a doctor and they go, okay, here's your symptom, here's a pill for this, and then you go back and go, I've got another symptom, like, oh, here's another pill for this, and you end up with rattling for pills that are counterbalancing side effects of the other pills, and it's just like, any chance there could be something else going on? But and it's not the doctor's fault, it's not the nurse's fault. I don't think anyone listening to this will ever be like, oh, it's the NHS's fault. It's not. They have like you said, you just got no time with your patients. You just got to get them in, out, and send them on their way with the best you can do in the teeny amount of time you're given per person. So I think there's going to be a lot of people, I think the NHS over here, everyone knows a nurse, everyone knows someone that works in the NHS. So there's going to be this shared, I'm sure, with loads of nurses going, we love you, we understand that actually it's really, really hard. And, they are heart-centered, and every experience we've had of, being with nurses, or if we've been in hospital, I'm sure everyone's got a story of like, oh, they were amazing. Anytime you hear of, you were sick, like the staff are amazing, always. And they're so undervalued. And, your story just, I think it's going to resonate with so many people. And, it happens in the corporate world as well, these levels of stress and the poor eating and things like that. But when you've basically got people's lives relying on you showing up and, like you said, just eating crisps and sweets and things just to get through because, a lunch break, what's that? You don't get a break.
Exactly.
Constantly working. So, I mean, the fact you went to India is lovely. That is absolutely on my list of places to go. We can finally leave the country.
Yes.
Absolutely one of the many places I'll go. But I would love to sort of touch on something you said about the mind, body and spirit. How do you incorporate that into the work you do with people? Because I think a lot of people are very used to, oh, I've got this illness, so I'll take this tablet, or I'll, and I think people are waking up to that, oh, I'll do a bit of meditation and then I won't be stressed. It's like, there's so many different elements. How do you incorporate the three, the mind, body, and the spirit, in the work that you do?
Yeah. So my approach as a nurse, I call myself a holistic nurse, but in other words, an integrative nurse. I think people sort of resonate a little bit more with the word holistic, approaching the person as a whole. But with integrative, it's really about, I like to incorporate a bit of everything, whatever works for that person. So if medication is working for someone, that's great, but it's not the whole picture. We need to dive deeper than that as well. And then some people might not want to take medications as well. And I noticed in my work as a nurse, and like I touched on before, it was completely looking at the symptoms, and it was addressing everything with a one-size-fits-all approach. So if you're experiencing these sorts of symptoms, or you've got this pain, or you've got this that's wrong with you, we'll treat it with this medication without actually taking into consideration the person's entire context. The only thing that we really take into consideration is if someone has an allergy to something, and so we'll discount one medication.
Yeah.
And so I think the body part of working in the hospital system is very predominant, but we're really lacking on the mind and the spirit element as well. And when I've actually worked with clients and I've actually asked them what they're actually doing to take care of their spirit, what they're doing to take care of their mind, or even their body, in a sense that's beyond medication, a lot of people say, this is the first time anyone has ever asked me this. And so what we do is really have a look at what the person's background and situation is, and why they might actually be experiencing some anxiety or chronic pain or whatever it is, because any physical ailment that we have arising within the body is a manifestation of something psychological and something a lot deeper. And I see that all the time in people that I've worked with who experience chronic pain. There is always, in 99.9% of cases, there is some sort of mental health issue happening there as well. And so, okay, we need to look at, so you've got the chronic pain. What was preceding the chronic pain? Were you experiencing any sort of mental distress? Where does that mental distress come from? Have you resolved that in the past? So it's really about having a look at the person as a whole, understanding what is going on within their mind, understanding what they're actually doing to nurture the body. Are they exercising? Are they eating well? Are they getting fresh air? Are they connecting with people? Those sorts of things. And then that sort of leads into the spirit as well. So what are you actually doing to take care of the spirit? Do you meditate? Do you have a connection with source energy? Do you have a connection with nature? All those types of things. So I guess it's hard to put it into a nutshell, because each person is really individual, and that's what my approach is, really tailoring care to what that individual person needs. And a lot of the time it's the first time that they've ever considered this as well, because and it's not the fault of anyone, it's sort of just the way that the Western healthcare system has fallen. We've sort of all been used to going to a doctor and getting prescribed a medication, and there's fantastic doctors out there, and they absolutely mean well, and I've got no doubt at all that the majority of them have gone into medicine and healthcare for the right reasons, but they're so time poor. And that's why we need to change things up a little bit and have a look at, okay, why are we treating people's healthcare like it's sort of a surface issue rather than going deeper into it with people? And I think there's issues around that as well. With healthcare is a lot more of a business these days than what it was even 100 years ago. And so, money is a big factor into it as well. And unless you're financially able to seek that alternative healthcare, you really are sort of stuck in a way within the limitations of the healthcare system. Yeah.
And how do you, because I there's so many things that I want to ask you, because I'm just thinking, someone like myself and a lot of the listeners are going to be like, yes, I know they'll be just nodding along, listening to this and going, yeah, we totally agree, because we're in that kind of world, in the understanding that there is a connection with mind, body and spirit, and actually a lot of things are connected, and we understand that. But I was just thinking, I was like, wow, how much resistance do you potentially get from people? I'm thinking of older generations, or people who are just like, no, I've been conditioned that I go to the doctor, they give me a pill and that's what I need. And how do you get any resistance from people when you're like, okay, so mind and body we could probably get on board with, but then you're like, and the spirit the spirit element is very important, and do you get any sort of pushback on that?
Oh, absolutely. Especially within the hospital system. And that's why I don't actually work within a hospital anymore. I left that altogether because it just wasn't aligned with the work that I wanted to do. And I was finding there was that resistance, and you'd sort of come across as a little bit woo-woo if you did suggest these things. I remember I was nursing a old lady who hadn't been outside for days and days and days. It was ridiculous. I think she'd been inside for over a month at least, and she had terminal cancer. And I just felt, and she just really wanted to go outside. She really, really wanted to get some fresh air. And being a more young and naive nurse, I sort of said to her, yeah, let's go outside, let's get some fresh air. And even that in itself, I remember sort of getting in trouble from my manager at the time, because what are you doing? You don't have time to do that. What's fresh air going to do? She needs to stay inside. She needs to take care of her health in here. And so even simple things like that, just getting fresh air to nurture your spirit and nurture your body, those types of things were really frowned upon. And that's why I left the hospital system altogether. Or if there was someone that was really anxious about having a procedure, the doctors would sort of load them up with a lot of anti-anxiety medication to deal with it, and when really that person just needed someone to sit and speak with them about what's going on and what they're anxious about and how we can actually manage it. So that was difficult. But since sort of branching into my own thing and working in my own space, I tend to sort of more attract people that are themselves also attracted to holistic health. But it's a shame, because in my ideal world, if I was in charge of the whole healthcare system, the hospital system, I would make things a lot more holistic and implement these things that we know that are good for us. And an example is, say, mindfulness. Mindfulness maybe 20 plus years ago was considered to be a little bit woo-woo, and it wasn't really something that we implemented into mental health care. But now, because we've got the science behind it to back it up, it is a lot more accepted. It's still not implemented as much as I would like, but it's gaining some more momentum. So it's sort of like the healthcare system is very behind. It sort of waits, and I understand. I'm a science geek myself. I appreciate and I understand the need for science and evidence, but sometimes we really miss out on the good things if we're waiting for science to catch up with everything. And if we know that these things are working, such as getting fresh air, or meditating, or connecting with nature in some way, having flowers in the room or plants in the room, if we know that these things are working, why not implement them? It's not going to hurt anyone. It's going to improve our health and well-being, even if it is just a placebo. There's a lot of power in the effect of the placebo.
Absolutely. And that's been proven time and time again. I mean, there's countless documentaries on there's countless studies that placebo works really, really well, and it baffles me that, and what you were saying about the science sort of catching up, when we look at government messaging as well about health and what's important for us, it's like, got to remember, not too long ago, the government were backing, like, hey, smoking's fine for you, don't worry about it, it's totally cool. Like, there's these new cigarettes which are healthier, these are all good. And it's like, wow, we need to remember this wasn't like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. we're talking a couple of decades ago that people were like, yeah, smoking's fine. So
Absolutely.
I think we have got to the point now, and I think you're right, you were talking about the collective earlier, that as individuals and as the collective, we need to start taking ownership of our health and our well-being, because lack of content is not a thing anymore. Like, you can Google everything. I mean, Netflix, I've actually recommended Netflix shows to my clients before. I'm like, look, there's this one on meditation, there's this one on medication, there's this one on this. The information is all out there.
Yes.
We know that these things work. And I think we almost need to retrain ourselves to go, do you know what? Maybe the mainstream messaging that we're hearing, over here from the NHS or from the governments and things, we were allowed to question it. We're allowed to think, you know what? Maybe I don't need to have meat and 2 veg, which is a very British thing. Maybe we can eat slightly differently. Maybe we do need a little bit more than 30 minutes exercise once a week. We need to actually take care of ourselves and take our own ownership back, like regain the power, because we have that full power, don't we? So it's it's within us to make these decisions and make these changes. But I do feel for a lot of people where there's just so much information. Do I have this? Do I have this? And it's like, health doesn't need to be complicated. But
that's right.
People like you that are out there to help people. And this is why I love the name, the gentle living. It's like, you said it yourself, the whole busyness is almost like a badge of honor, and like hustle and work hard. It's like, nope, that'll kill you.
Exactly. And you said it so beautifully, taking ownership over your health. I think for too long we have given our own ownership across to healthcare providers. And of course, we should be seeking out healthcare when we need it, absolutely, and seeking out expert opinions on certain things. But we shouldn't be giving away our full control to other systems. And that's what a lot of us do, and that's what I certainly did as well earlier in my life when I was struggling a lot with my anxiety. I just put all my trust and faith in healthcare providers who were helpful to the extent that they could be, but I wasn't actually empowering myself to take care of myself in the way that I needed. And I think it's so life-changing when you actually understand that you are actually in control of your own health and well-being. And like you said, your health does not need to be complicated. I think we really do overcomplicate it, and we look to externally, we look at what other people are doing, and we probably over Google things as well. Whereas if you really just tune inwards to what you need, like I sort of did after my panic attack in India, where I sort of thought, no, I need to actually listen to what I need, what's going to work for me, and take it simple and go from there.
I think that's so important, because we're going to go on to some sort of really useful things that people can do and take away from this episode to help them live a little bit more gently and take really good care of themselves. But what you said then about looking inward, that I think is really powerful. And I don't think it's something that happens quickly, but I think from my own experience of sort of having burnout and all the things, and premature baby and the postnatal depression that was never picked up, I was always looking outside of me. I was like, unless a doctor or a midwife or someone tells me, love, I think there's something a bit wrong, I'll just keep going, because it's just easier to keep going and not listen to anything. And it's only when, and I don't know whether you find this when your clients come to you, it's something happens, something triggers it. They have, all of a sudden they've got a diagnosis, or all of a sudden they've hit that wall, or certainly in the entrepreneurial world and the business world, they're just like, I am burnt the F out. I cannot do anymore. And it shows up, I've got a lot of female friends and clients who chronic fatigue is just this massive thing. They go to the doctor, they get the all clear from absolutely everything, and they just go, oh, we don't know what it is. It's chronic fatigue. They go, there's your label, off you pop. You're going to be tired for a while. It's not. It's just one of those things. And I'm like, I've had friends tell me, I'm like, no. I was like, no. It's like when you're told, oh, well, it's IBS. Deal with it. I'm like, oh, I just want to sort of, give them a hug and go, no, come into my world. There's people I know that will help you get to the root cause of what is going on, because it's just you given a label. And until you really start tuning into yourself and having that awareness, I talk all the time about awareness, having that awareness of how your body's reacting to different things, what's going on, that, those times that you're getting stressed or anxious or dizzy or, whatever the symptoms are. what's happening, because we're so busy
Yes.
all the time. We're not listening. There's no quiet time for us to actually listen to our own inner guidance that's going, will you just shush for a second, because I have some very important information for you.
Absolutely. Yes. And when you do start getting those symptoms, such as the pain or the chronic fatigue or any sort of physical ailment, it's the body yelling to you, listen, stop and listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Whatever you're doing right now is just not sustainable. And often when you get into something like chronic pain or chronic fatigue or something quite debilitating like that, it's because there's been such a build-up over a long period of time of something being ignored. And when it's something serious like that, it sort of forces you to stop and actually assess where you're at. And similarly with sustaining injuries and that sort of thing too. So although you may have an accident and you might sustain an injury, often there's something deeper that's going on for you that is your body is trying to communicate to you. I can remember I have sprained my ankle about 4 times now, and each time when I reflect on that, I didn't realize it at the time, but each time when I reflect back on it and think about it, it was because I was rushing around way too much and I wasn't stopping to actually take care of myself. And so your body will communicate in a way to you that's going to make you stop and pay attention and tune inwards and actually listen to what you need.
100%. So I would love for you to share, there's obviously so many things that people can do, and you've touched on a few of them already, but what are sort of a few things that people can do that are listening to this going, well, okay, I want to tune in, I'm nodding away agreeing to this, but do you know what, I'm a bit stressed. And for the Brits that listen to this when they go up, we're in lockdown, everything's crazy. What can people do to actually start embracing a more gentle living lifestyle?
Good question. Well, I like to simplify it, and I have my 5 pillars of gentle living, I call it. So it's connecting with the natural elements. So we connect with earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And so if you can incorporate 5 of these elements every day in even just a small way, you're going to be getting closer to nurturing your nervous system and actually implementing deeper self-care. So firstly, if we look at earth, earth is the one I like to always start with because the element of earth represents grounding and stability and our foundations. So if we can connect with earth each day, even if you're working in a really fast-paced job or you're under a lot of stress, there's always a way you can implement it. So when I think of earth, I think of the things that ground me. I think of connecting with nature. Excuse me. So these could be things such as eating a really earthy meal, eating something with a lot of root vegetables in it, for instance. It could also be going outside and just going for a walk barefoot on the earth as well, because the earth does emit positive ions, I think, which help to balance the nervous system, and science has shown that as well. Or it could be just getting some fresh flowers and having them to look at, because there is a lot of evidence behind just having something in your space that is connected with earth can really help to calm and to soothe your nervous system. Then there's air. How can you implement air into your everyday life? So that could be literally just getting out and getting some fresh air. It could be doing a bit of breath work. Air also represents the intellect and communication. So can you have a good connection with someone that day? Can you have a really good conversation where you feel like you're listened to and you're heard? Then we've got water. So again, can you literally connect with water? I know for highly sensitive people, it is really powerful too. And this is something that I do each day to sort of cleanse my energy. When I'm in the shower, I sort of just visualize the water just washing away any negative energy that I might have accrued during the day, and it's just going down the drain. So connecting with water, or you can go by the sea, even looking at a picture of water, and of course, keeping yourself hydrated as well is really important. So where are we at? So fire. How can you implement fire into your everyday life as well? So fire represents our passion and our purpose, and sort of exerting our energy in a really healthy way. So getting a little bit of movement every day is so important, even if it's just a walk, doing some stretching, something that's going to at least ignite the fire within you, or following something that might be a bit of a passion for you as well. And then the fifth element is spirit. And this is the one that is so overlooked. And within all of my mental health care work, I think this is the one that's neglected the most, because it's when we have a disconnection with our spirit that we go into periods of feeling quite low and feeling really disconnected from others as well. If we're not taking care of our spirit, we're really not taking care of the essence of who we are. And to take care of the spirit, it really just involves reflecting on what are the things that feed your spirit. So when I actually did this exercise, I sort of just wrote down a list of what are the things that feed my spirit, what sort of uplifts me. And the things that came up for me were things such as visiting an art gallery. I know that in lockdown that's not really a possibility, but I know when I was in lockdown and my spirit was feeling quite neglected, I did things like I jumped online and did virtual tours of galleries. Things such as visiting a different neighbourhood to immerse yourself in a different ethnicity or something like that, trying a different cuisine, spending time in nature, writing, meditating, whatever it is that feeds your spirit. If you can incorporate these 5 things into your life every day, even in just a simple way, that's going to be a really good start, because you're already on the way to acknowledging that your needs are unique and tuning inwards as well, rather than looking externally for the answers.
They're amazing. I love the fact that it's based on the elements. I think the thing I really sort of picked up on there's so much the attachment to nature. I think when we're in lockdown, you know, that is something all we can do at the moment is go for a walk. We can't go to the gym, we can't go anywhere. So you know, but that attachment to nature, I remember in the first lockdown, it was almost a bit of a novelty, and when people were like, did you hear the birds? People were like amazed, like, oh, you can hear the birds because there was no traffic. And it was almost like the whole country, and I'm sure this happened in, you know, many parts around the world, but all of a sudden we were forced to stop. And the conversations I had with so many people were like, oh, you know, it's actually really nice. Have you seen how blue the sky is? Have you heard the birds? And I remember now I'm thinking, I don't know whether I would have ever stopped to even notice whether I could hear the birds or what shade of blue the sky was, but we had nothing else to focus on. So, and in the first lockdown, the weather was beautiful, and it was almost like, you know, people had the opportunity to go, oh, and breathe and notice nature and the world, and the fact that actually, other than humans, nothing had changed in the world. You know, nature was just carrying on quite merrily. None of the animals cared that COVID was around. Like, they were like, la la la, the world's still spinning, everything's fine. It's just you humans that are freaking out and stuff. Like, we're all good. And I think that link with nature has just gone. You know, I mean, I'm here at whatever time it is, 9:20 at night, all the lights on, my big light, and, you know, it's that switching off. We don't have that, you know, the circadian rhythm or anything like that anymore. We get up when the alarm goes off, regardless of what time it is or what the daylight is. Many of us don't get out during the day. You know, back in the day when people had office jobs and things, we're not leaving our little air-conditioned spaces most of the time. And I think that really does have such a big effect, and it's not recognized enough, just that getting outside and feeling a little bit more expansive, even if you're in a city, just to get out of your usual space. So we really have lost our way in a way, haven't we? Because I remember when COVID all first hit and we all went into lockdown to start with, it was a bit of a novelty to start with. It was like, wow, I can slow down. And like you said, look at the sky, look at the colours, look at the flowers outside, the things that we are too busy rushing around to stop and actually take notice of. And actually that does remind me as well of the founder of modern nursing, so Florence Nightingale, which a lot of people would be familiar with. She actually did acknowledge the importance of nature in healthcare. So this was back, I think, in the 1700s, I think she was sort of she founded modern nursing. And she did notice that people that she nursed that had a view of
flowers or gardens did seem to heal a lot quicker than people that were sort of stuck in tents. So she nursed a lot of soldiers during the war. So the soldiers that were sort of stuck in tents and not connected with nature, they tended to not heal as quick as the ones that did have that connection with nature. And over time, we sort of lost our way. And I think that sort of was because of I think in the 1900s was when we had a real revolution of technology taking over the healthcare system, which is great. We need all that, and we need innovations, and we need to advance our healthcare. But it was sort of like that all got lost and dismissed altogether in favour of technology and bright lights and air conditioning and all those sorts of things as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you could wave a magic wand and transform the healthcare system and have it in a way that was far more nurturing and sort of supportive of wellness and healing, what would you change? Like, is there sort of like 2 or 3 things that you just be like, if we could just put that in, because it is healing, that's I do feel like hospital, and I want to be really clear, neither of us are saying, oh, modern medicine is bad or anything like that. My goodness, we need it. I am so grateful for it. I wouldn't have, we've all probably got someone that's survived cancer because of modern healthcare. We've got, babies that have been born and survived because of modern healthcare. It is absolutely amazing. But the healing, like, they're great at fixing us up, but the healing part is maybe lacking somewhat. So what would you do if you could wave a magic wand? What would you do to sort of transform the sort of Western healthcare system?
Yes, I have often thought about this. So yes, I think everything that's already in place, the medicine and the technology that we've got to address healthcare, that sort of stuff is absolutely amazing. But it's the things that we've lost. So it's the things like fresh air. So in a hospital, everything is recirculated air. You can't even, well, the hospitals I've worked in anyway, you can't even open the window. So just implementing a bit of nature back into the hospital, I think that would make such a difference. Even having plants within the hospital or aquariums, things like that. I know that when I've worked in children's hospitals, they are a little bit better than adult hospitals, where they sort of acknowledge the importance of things like play therapy and art therapy. And I know that the major hospital here in Melbourne, the Royal Children's Hospital, they've got a big aquarium and they've got an animal enclosure. So things like that are great, but we don't have it enough, I think, for adults. We don't encourage things that actually facilitate healing that aren't sort of mainstream medicine. So there's no opportunities within hospitals for adults to do things like art therapy or music therapy, or there might be a garden that they can go and sit out in, but it's not necessarily therapeutic, or there might be staff, in the distance having a smoke. So it's not really conducive to healing. So just implementing a little bit more nature into the hospital system, that would be ideal. And also a big overhaul of the nutrition that we have in hospitals too. I know that when I have worked in hospitals, we're pretty much just serving people up slop or mass-produced stuff that is really bad for healing. And there's all that evidence connecting nutrition with healing as well, and nutrition and gut health with mental health. And so in hospitals, we serve up things like mass-produced pastas or sausages, meats, all these sorts of really processed kind of things. There's not enough sort of fresh fruit and vegetables. And I think that is a lot to do with budgets of hospitals as well. But the thing that really bugs me with hospitals and sort of cutting corners around things like food is that, yeah, you might be sort of saving money in the short term by serving up these mass-produced foods, but these people aren't going to be healing quickly. So they're going to be in hospital for longer, or there's going to be a high turnover where they might leave hospital, and because they haven't been getting the nutrition they need, they're going to be quickly back in. And if we were implementing these things that might be a little bit more expensive to start with, I think we're going to have such a longer term return on that, and for people's overall health and well-being, and people will be less likely. I think it would reduce hospital stays and all that sort of thing as well. I think the only thing would be people might want to actually stay in hospital because it'd be much more of an pleasant environment, but of course no one wants to be there, and just the stress of being in hospital and the horrible environment that it often can be as well. It's not, it's sort of really impacting the nervous system, which is impacting your healing as well.
Absolutely. I think nutrition is so important, but also that's been made really complicated by companies that want to make it complicated, and dieting companies out there, or the ones that, counting your calories or your sins or all this other nonsense. Like, no wonder people have no idea nowadays. They're like, oh, it's fine, I can have this because it's full of sweetener, and that's okay. It's like, nope. Nope, it's not. And so I do feel, and I know that many of the listeners will already be well on board with this and are aware of the connection with nutrition and health, but we do live in a world that's a little bit foggy on the facts and on the details. So working with someone like yourself to be able to go, right, here's the whole picture of all the crazy little things that, all these little symptoms that I'm seeing, is so valuable, because I presume that that's what you are able to sort of see for them. Being a highly sensitive person as well, you can sort of tune in a little bit and go, let's look at nutrition and mind, body, spirit, all the things that are actually going to come together and
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's where my gifts as being a highly sensitive person are better used, because I am able to, and all highly sensitive people have this, well, everyone has intuition, but I think highly sensitive people do have quite a strong connection with their intuition. And with that connection, I'm sort of able to really understand the person beyond surface level, and to actually go deep with them to understand what's going on for them, and to help them to get a little bit of relief from whatever it is that they might be experiencing. So the majority of the people that I work with are also highly sensitive people who might have who might be feeling sort of overwhelmed and lost their way on how to actually harness their highly sensitive gifts so that they can actually flourish. And that's where I was at a few years ago. I just sort of felt like, oh, I've got this overwhelming anxiety, and you just feel like this big ball of stress. But actually, if you can transform that energy and direct it into something meaningful, I think highly sensitive people are some of the most special people in the world that will make a big difference.
I obviously completely agree. I mean, there's more and more people embracing that side of things as well, and it's interesting to use the term woo-woo. I used to use that all the time, but I'm like, actually no, it's got to that point now. I'm like, no, this is life. This is actually the truth of life, the connection, and being intuitive and not blocking it out and not going, oh, that's a strange coincidence. I'm like, nope, that's
yes.
Having, I shared the other day, I think with some friends, that sometimes when I'm coaching people, I'll be so in the zone and we'll just be talking and I'll be listening to what they say, and it's like a voice comes out and goes something, self-love or compassion or something, or it'll be like this message that just comes through like a loud hailer, and I'm like, well, that wasn't what we were talking about, but okay. And I'll just so blah blah blah, and I'll mention whatever it is that came up, and every single time without fail you just see their face go, oh my god, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, well, I don't know where that came from. I can't take credit for it because it didn't come from me. It just came from somewhere else.
That's amazing.
I think the more you can tune into that, it's an incredible ability to help other people, because you can connect with them on a deeper level. And a nurse or a doctor in a doctor's surgery or a hospital that's got 10 minutes with you, how on earth have they got the time to? They've got literally time to go through your notes and go, right, let's get you fixed, let's get you out, let's sort of send you on your way. So I think working with someone like you is such an incredible thing to do for people. I would say, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but almost before they get to that point of like, oh, here's the pain, here's the issue, can you help people if they're sort of maybe just teetering on that point of something's not quite right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that would be the ideal place to pick up everything, because that sort of comes just before the manifestation of whatever the distress might be. But it's tricky, and you touched on it a little bit earlier about how it really sort of takes something really big to slow people down and recognize that there's something not right going on and that they need to make a change. But certainly, if someone has reached just before that point of it sort of being something bigger than what it is, I think that's such a great place to really intervene, because I'm all for prevention. Prevention over cure. Yes, so important.
So how can people find you? How can they find out more about your work? What's the best place to find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me most hanging out on Instagram. So you can find me The Gentle Living Nurse. You can find me on my website as well. So www.thegentleLivingNurse.com. I do have at the moment a free gentle living planner, which works really well for highly sensitive souls who might be feeling a lot of overwhelm, because I sort of was finding for a while there, when I was using your traditional planner, I felt like there was a lot of masculine energy, like, oh, I'm doing this, and this today. And there wasn't sort of room in there to actually implement your self-care and actually make it sustainable for yourself. And so I quickly went into burnout. So I have developed a free planner as well that people can download if you join my Gentle Living community, which is free as well. So you can just go to www.thegentleLivingNurse.com/Gentle Living Community, and then that'll just be emailed through to you. And yes, and then there's my podcast as well, the Gentle Living Podcast. Yeah.
The podcast is amazing. I absolutely love it. I mean, I could listen to you all the time. Your accent is just divine. I have the Australian accent is so beautiful. I could listen to you all the time, and your podcast is so calming. It's so calming. So I highly recommend all of you make sure you go and find that on iTunes. Is it on iTunes?
Yeah, iTunes, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher. All of them, I think. So
amazing. But all the links, I believe, are on your Instagram as well to find most of the stuff.
That's right.
Such a pleasure having you on here. Honestly, I've got some notes here. I'm like, there are so many other things I could go into. I want to talk about the gut and mind connection and all the different things that you can do for that. But I think for now, I will leave the listeners with the amazing tips that you've given. And I will say to anyone listening, if you know anyone in the NHS, if you know any nurses, or if you know any entrepreneurs, business people that are feeling like they're just at the brink, which there are a lot of people at the moment at feeling like that in the UK, regardless of what profession you're in, please do share this episode, because Becky is incredible. She's got this amazing, like I said, she's got this amazing planner. Her podcast is amazing. It will just calm you and nourish your soul, because the information is amazing and you can utilize it. But just the way it's delivered, I'm just like, oh, I feel relaxed already. So I highly recommend the podcast. Please do share this episode with anyone you feel will benefit from it. And Becky, just thank you so much again for getting up at the crack of dawn in Australia to talk with me this evening.
Oh, you're very welcome, Heather. And thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you, darling. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming episode, head over to Instagram and connect with me at Heather Angel Coaching. If you enjoy this podcast, please share your thoughts in a review on iTunes. I truly value your feedback, and I take the time to read every single review. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you in the next episode.